What's up, BookTube? Welcome back. My name is Laura if you're new here, and today we're wrapping up all of my reading stats from 2021 as well as going over my goals for 2022. Happy New Year's, everybody. What a wild freaking year that was. Here's to desperately hoping that this next year is going to be a little bit better. I'm sure we're all kind of in the same boat right now, but you know, it just was not a good year for really anybody, I think. There were, of course, moments where things were really good, but just kind of globally it was not great for all of us. I hope everyone is doing okay. You're all safe and happy and healthy as much as possible right now, but we're just gonna skip over to the more positive sides. As shitty as this year was, I did actually have a really good reading year, and I also really love making this video. I did this one last year, and I love like tracking my reading and talking about stats and all this nerdy stuff, so I'm very much looking forward to making this video. This is my second year using a reading spreadsheet, and I love it. I love seeing all my numbers and everything. It just makes me very happy. I, once again, same as last year, I forgot who made the spreadsheet, so I will link that down below once I figure out who it was. But yeah, so for today I just have my laptop in front of me here, so I'm just going to be taking you guys through my spreadsheet and going over all of my stats and all my little pie charts and everything, and just talking about my goals that I had last year, if I achieved those goals, as well as my goals for this year. So let's get started with that. So this is the overview of my spreadsheet. This is everything that I read last year. Quite a bit. I'm actually really proud of myself. I read 82 books last year. Lots of really good stuff. This year I did actually get better at tracking my DNFs. That was one of my goals from last year, was to get better at it. This is not entirely accurate still. There were definitely a few that I missed, but this is definitely more accurate than it was last year. And I also DNF'd a lot less this year. I'm not really sure why, because I used to DNF left, right, and center, but for some reason I really only did DNF probably around 20 books or so this year. Last year and like every year previous, I could literally do that in like a week. So not really sure what happened, but I just wasn't DNFing that much, which I'm very happy about. But I am thinking that I'm going to do a whole video on the books that I DNF'd this year. I'm not really sure yet, so let me know if that's something that you would be interested in. I think it would be kind of fun to do. But yeah, so that's the DNF page. Let's go over into my stats. This page stresses me out. I'm more of a visual person, so seeing everything just jumbled together as words gives me anxiety, so I probably won't spend too long here, and then I'll just go over to the charts afterwards. But it's this part up here that I'm most looking at right now. So 82 books this year. I read a grand total of 21,365 pages, which is amazing. I forget what last year's was. I think it was maybe around the same, give or take. I'm not positive. I'll like put the number from last year up here so you can compare, but I do not at all remember what it is right now. Hours listened, this is not accurate. I did start tracking how long each audiobook was at the beginning of the year, and then I stopped caring, so that is not accurate whatsoever. Average days that I spent on each book was 3.5 days, which is actually less than last year. I think last year was 4.5, give or take, so that's good. I was reading each book faster. I did read a lot of shorter books this year, so that's probably why. A lot of things that I could like get through in a day. Average pages per day was 131 pages, which is also more than last year. Last year was 115, I think it was. But again, a lot more novellas and stuff that I can get through in a day, so that does make sense. And then my average books per month was almost 7. So again, better than last year. I think last year was 5, maybe? I forget. And then everything else that's down here is going to be in the charts section. So I'm just going to go over to that because again, I am a visual person. Here are the charts. So in terms of fiction versus non-fiction, I read 92% were fiction, 76 books, and 6 books or 7% were non-fiction. So one of my goals from last year was to read more educational non-fiction. I'm not sure how much of that was educational non-fiction, so I don't think I technically hit that goal, but there was more non-fiction in general. For the format, this makes me really sad, honestly. Only 25% of my books were in print. 34% were ebooks and 40% were audiobooks. I didn't even listen to audiobooks until like 2 years ago, so seeing that it's now almost half of my reading is so weird to me. Same as last year, this is not entirely accurate for this as well, because I do often read the physical book as well as the audiobook at the same time. But I think for this year I'm going to change the spreadsheet to have an option for mixed media, because that is honestly my favorite way to read, so I'll definitely be adding that for an option on there. But either way, I would love to get more print books on here. I know for last year one of my goals was to read more book off of my physical shelf, and I definitely didn't do that, but we'll get into that afterwards. In terms of the form, mostly prose, which is pretty normal for me. I had 35% prose, 3% poetry, 22% novellas, 24% comic, which is more than last year. That was one of my goals from last year, was to read more comic books because I just really enjoy them. So huge increase there actually. 3% were essay collections, and 3% were short story collections. So yeah, that's like pretty fine. I don't really have any goals in terms of like the kinds of books that I read. The majority will always be prose, and I would like to keep prose probably around at least 40%, if not 50, but like otherwise I'm fine with it being this way. In terms of audience, this is where I'm honestly shocked. I used to like pretty much only read YA books, and now 50% of my books were for adult audiences, 35% YA, and 14% middle grade. That is so weird to me. I think honestly, same thing as last year too. A lot of my like adult book comes from romance novels, especially during COVID. Romance books are just so like soothing and fun to read, and I've just really needed some comfort this year, so I've been reading a lot of romance novels in the last 2 years. I still mostly read fantasy, and there have been a little bit more adult or like new adult fantasy books that I've read, which is why my adult is 50%, but a lot of that 50 definitely comes from romance novels. But yeah, this is like very shocking to me to see that half of my reading was adult. That is so weird to me. Moving on to genre, 51% of my reading was fantasy, which is exactly what I want to see. I always want to have fantasy be at least 50%, if not more. I would be fine with fantasy even being like 60 or 70% of my reading, but 50 is my like bare minimum. And then my next highest was romance with 20%, 1% mystery or crime. I can't even remember what book that was. I have no idea what that even was. 7% horror, 6% nonfiction, 1% memoir. What even was that? I have no idea what book that was. 3% general fiction, and 8% sci-fi. I would love to see more sci-fi on here. I think one of my goals from last year was to read more sci-fi. Yeah, more sci-fi. Did not succeed there whatsoever. I think I actually read significantly less sci-fi this year. Moving on to publication date. For 2020, my goal was to read more new releases, whereas for this year, I wanted to focus on my backlist a bit more. So I definitely succeeded there. 61% of my books from this year were backlist. 38% were from this year. And then 1% was an arc that I got that's going to be released soon actually. Books by page count. I read a lot of novellas this year, like a lot, and I did not read very many big books, more than I thought I did actually. I've read 6 books that were over 500 pages, which I'm okay with. I don't read a whole lot of chunky books. They make me very nervous, so I'm actually surprised that there's even 6 of them that are over 500. I think also with COVID, my brain has been soup lately, so I have a hard time focusing on books that are like really long. So novellas have definitely been my best friend this year. I really enjoy them. I would prefer to have the books that I read be mostly in the like 300 to 400 range. In terms of book source, this is where I'm sad again, because my own TBR, I only read 15 books off of my own shelves. Out of the 82 that I read, 15 were from my shelves, and that makes me so sad. So 18% were from my own shelves. I read 7% from NetGalley, 23% from my library, which have all just been ebooks and audiobooks. I haven't actually been to my library like in person in well over a year now actually. 31% from Scribd, and then 20% that I borrowed. That would be from my roommate mostly. She also is a big reader, and I borrow her books a lot. So that's pretty okay. I definitely want to see my own TBR get picked up. I need to read my actual books for once. That was also a goal from last year, and I did not do that. I think I read way less of my own books this year than I did last year, which I'm sad about, but whatever. Oops. Books finished by month. My best month was October, where I read 12 books, and then my worst month was November, where I read 4 books. That was the month where Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin just completely fucked me over. Otherwise, though, it was pretty much the same throughout the rest of the year. April and November were both 4 books, but everything else is usually around like 5 to 7 for the most part, and then we had a really big spike from August to October. Not sure what happened there. I guess I was just in the mood to read. And then for star rating, this makes me very happy because my lowest rated books were only 2 stars, and I only had 4 of those ones. And then I had 1 2.5 star, and then everything else was 3 stars and above, which is fantastic. I didn't have a single 1-star book this year. So overall, it was just a really good reading year. So we had 17 3-star books, 9 3.5, 31 4, 2 4.5, and 18 5 stars. So that is excellent. I love that. When it comes to own voices versus not own voices, I'm still, same as last year, not entirely sure what counts as own voices. So I'm not positive how accurate this is. But as far as I'm aware, 35% were own voices and 65% were not own voices, which is definitely an improvement from last year, but I forget the actual number from last year. But either way, definitely read more own voices for this year, so that's always really good. Books in translation, I read I think one book that was in translation, and that was a manga. Everything else is not, but that is pretty normal for me. I probably should try and read more books from other places, but I make no promises. Author gender, I read 69% female authors, 14% male, 13% non-binary, and 2% other. I think that was a book of short stories where it was like a bunch of authors. One of my goals from last year was to read more non-binary authors, and I think it's just pretty much the same as last year. So not a success, but not a fail either, I guess. I don't like that I have more male authors than non-binary, so that I'm going to have to fix for this year. I want my reading to be like as queer as humanly possible, basically. But being 70% female authors is pretty normal for me. A lot of my books are romance novels and then YA fantasy, which is largely dominated by female authors, so I'm okay with that. Yeah, definitely more non-binary people, please. And then for POC authors versus white authors, this year I read 29% POC authors and 70% white authors, which is still not good, but better than last year. Last year I was at 78% white authors, so there was definitely an improvement, but there needed to be a much larger improvement, so that'll definitely be a goal for this year as well. And then for POC protagonists, I read 39% POC protagonists and 61% white protagonists. So again, definitely improved from last year. Last year I read 73% white protagonists, so a lot more for this year, but again, I need to get that up there. So I'm glad that I was better for it, but I'm not nearly where I should be. So that'll be a big goal for this year too. My queer authors, I read 40% queer authors and 60% not queer authors. This, I have no idea how accurate it is. I don't look too closely into like the lives of the authors that I read. So I usually just do like a really quick Google search of like, you know, is this author queer? And if I don't get an answer within like 2 seconds, then I just leave that blank. And obviously like some people aren't publicly out. So again, no clue how accurate that is, but at least 40% of my authors that I read this year were publicly out. And then for protagonists, this makes me very happy because it was a huge improvement from last year. 50% of the books that I read had queer protagonists and 50% did not. This is a huge improvement from last year. My numbers for last year, 41% of the main characters were queer, so I'm happy that I saw a improvement there. Oh, and then for the authors last year, only 22% were queer authors. So a huge improvement there as well. And then we'll just open up Goodreads real quick and just look at their like year in review. See if there's anything different. So the shortest book that I read was 56 pages, and then the longest was 658. Average book length was 256. The most popular, Night Circus, that does not surprise me, and the least popular was the Masterclass Sex Toys book that I read while I was bored at work one day. Highest rated was the Tea Dragon Tapestry. I adored that book. It was so good. And then yeah, here's just a quick scroll through of all the books that I read for last year. A lot of good stuff on here, and not that much bad stuff. Oh, so many good things. I did write down all the like goals that I mentioned in my video from last year. So keep track of DNFs, I did. Read more comics, I did. Read more adults, definitely did that. Fantasy be at least half, did that. More sci-fi, did not do. More books up in my shelves, I did not do that either. More non-binary authors, did not do that. More POC authors and main characters, success, but like barely. More queer authors, definitely improved on there. More big books, I'm not sure if I improved from last year, but I am still proud of myself for getting at least 6 of them, so that's really nice. Make progress on series, I'll get into that in a moment. Read more backlists, I did that. Use my TBR jar, I did not do that. Like literally not even once, it's fine. Read more from authors that I like. I did do that. I read some more books by V.E. Schwab this year, and then there were a couple others as well, but I forget who they were right now. I read some more books from Lana Harper, and then read more educational nonfiction, did not do. And then yeah, real quick for the series thing. So my biggest goal for last year was to read more series and just like read sequels and everything, and to try and actually make progress on the series that I've been reading for years. And there was definitely a big success in there. So I did start quite a few series this year. I started 21 new series in 2021, but I either finished or caught up on 25 series, so that's good. So I at least have more series finished than I do unfinished now, so that's awesome. And then just in terms of like how many sequels those that I actually ended up reading. Out of the 82 books that I read, 27 of those books were sequels. So that is awesome. I'm very happy about that. I would definitely call that goal a huge success. So my series page on my spreadsheet is looking so much better right now, which I did just stop screen recording right now. So I'll just like overlay a photo of that real quick, just to like show you guys what it looks like. But yeah, definitely a lot better than I was at the beginning of last year. So very happy about that, but I still need to do a lot more series reading for this year. So my goals for 2022, definitely again, reading more sequels and finishing up series. That's going to be my #1 goal for the year. Reading more POC authors, 100% that's going to be a huge goal of mine for this year. More queer and especially non-binary authors as well. I would like non-binary to be at least 20% of my authors for this year and less male. More books off of my shelves, please, for the love of God, which I'm already doing well on. 3 out of the 4 books that I'm reading for January are off of my shelves, so that's already really good. But yeah, so that's kind of the gist of my goals for this year. I don't really have too many set aside from the ones that I just mentioned, so I'll just keep that nice and simple and just leave that there. But yeah, so I guess that's really it for this video then. Let me know how your reading year went. If you also made a video about your stats and everything, please let me know. I would love to watch it. I love watching stats videos and stuff. It just makes me so happy. But otherwise, that'll do it for today's video. All of my like end of the year stuff is going to be coming in January, all of the like best and worst of the year and all that stuff. I know most people were doing that in December, but I prefer to do it in January. So all that stuff is going to be coming to you guys very shortly. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!